God's kingdom because God invites you, not because of anything you can. Let's look at Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 to 7 together. Jesus tells us a story. He starts his story in verse 1 with, "The kingdom of heaven is like." He's about to show us how the kingdom of heaven works. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. The story starts with a landowner out into a marketplace to seek workers. Then, for the rest of the day, he keeps going out. He goes out, verse 1, early in the morning. Verse 3, about 9 in the morning. Verse 5, about noon and about 3 in the morning. And finally, verse 6, about 5 in the afternoon. He goes out 5 times into the marketplace, seeks out workers. He doesn't put up an ad and filter through applicants like we do these days. He personally finds people himself. And what kind of people, you may ask? Look with me at verse 3. Others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. Look at verse 6. Still others standing around. He seeks out people who've been standing around since the early morning. Are these the kind of people you'd want to hire for a job? The workers themselves give us the answer. Look at verse 7. The people explain they've been standing around. No one has hired us. Now, if you're on the job hunt and you have an interview, the interviewer will probably ask you why you're a good fit for the job. What are your chances of getting the job if you answer, "Well, everyone else rejected me, so I guess I'm available"? The company might appreciate your honesty, but you're walking out there, aren't you? That's what the people in this passage are like. They're the last people that you'd want to hire. They're the bottom of the barrel. But look at how generous the landowner is. He hires these unwanted people all day long. He hires them without expecting lots of work from them. Look in verse 6. He hires workers at the end of the day. He says he'll pay them for 8 hours of work, and he knows they'll only do 1 hour. The landowner doesn't bring them into his vineyard because he thinks they'll be good workers. No. He seeks them out and brings them in because he wants to, because it's his will. What's Jesus saying? God is the vineyard owner. He's the one that invites you into the kingdom of heaven. Those who enter the kingdom of heaven, they don't earn their invitation. Only God's invitation gets you in. The disciples that Jesus is telling the story to, they're the workers in that story. They're the ones slacking in the marketplace all day. They're the bottom of the barrel. Let me illustrate it differently. Imagine a father washing a car in a garage. His young kids are sitting in the backyard, not doing much. They're bickering and mucking around. And the father knows that his kids aren't car washers. They can barely do anything for themselves. But he calls them over and he slowly teaches them to wash the car so that they can be with him. The kids wash the car with their dad, badly, not well, not because they deserve it, not because they're good at it, but because their dad calls them to it so that he can be with them. Jesus is saying, none of the actions that we do compel God to bring us into his kingdom. Nothing in us means that God should bring us in. Not our goodness, not our works, not even the works we could do for God. If you're a Christian, what comes to mind when you think about God inviting you in? What gives you comfort about this? Is it your attributes, your goodness, your abilities? If it is, then it's so important that you listen to this passage. Jesus is saying, It's not anything about you that saves you. It's all about what God has done for you. You might feel uncomfortable hearing this. If you do, you might need to reflect on why you think you're saved. It's only God's invitation into his kingdom that brings you in. Nothing else. If you're not a Christian, you might have thought that it's what Christians do that makes God invite them in. This passage shows us that this thinking is wrong. It's what God does that means he can invite people in. That's really good news, because if you're anything like me, you mess up each and every day. You do things and think things that are not good. You don't even live up to your own standards, let alone God's. And Jesus recognizes that. His story shows that none of the workers is good enough for an invitation to the vineyard. None of us is good enough for God's invitation into his kingdom. But Jesus is saying, despite that, God still wants you to come in. And you can come to him with nothing. If that seems crazy, it's about to get crazier. Point number 2. You don't contribute anything when you're in the kingdom, because the work you do is from God. Let's look at Matthew chapter 20, verses 8 to 16. So it's the end of the day. The landowner pays his workers. First he pays the first and the second, all the way to the last, exactly according to the work they did. He looks at their timesheets, looks up the minimum wage, and pays them overtime if they worked it, right? No, he completely turns the tables. Look at verse 8. The landowner starts by paying the last workers and goes backwards to the first. Look at verse 10. He pays all the workers the same. He ignores the amount of time they actually spent working. Why is the landowner doing things like this? Isn't it simpler to do things the normal way? Shouldn't he keep the peace among his workers? They don't seem happy, as we'll see. He's heading for an employment law complaint, the first case of a company overpaying its employees. Remember, at the start of the story, the workers were unwanted. It was only because the landowner wanted them that they got hired. It wasn't because of their skills or abilities. Because of this, it's only because of the landowner's generosity that they get paid at all. It's not according to their work, skill, or time. And the landowner wants all the workers to understand this. So he pays the last workers first, so that the first workers are there to see it. He humbles the workers that thought they could brag about their work, and he raises up the workers that might be ashamed of the little work that they did. He makes them all equal, so that the first are last and the last are first. And what do the workers think of this? Look at verses 11 and 12. They are not happy. Why? They're angry that the landowner paid them the same amount as the last workers. Notice the language in verse 12. They're angry that the landowner made them equal to the last workers. They think that they're better than the others. They're saying, how dare you make those people equal to us? We're better than them. But the landowner sets them straight. Let me read the landowner's response. But he answered one of them, I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? The landowner brought the workers onto his vineyard by his generosity. They are his workers. They do his work on his dollar by his generosity. They're not paid by the hour, they're paid by him. So he decides their reward. Let's go back to the kids washing the car. The dad starts by teaching the oldest. Let's say he's 5. First, he holds his hand and he guides him on how to wash the car. It's a long, slow process. His kid is not a car washer. That is not a career that he should go down. For the kid as well, it feels like ages, but he eventually learns how to wash a car. And then the dad moves on to the younger siblings. They get more time to keep mucking around in the backyard, but they eventually learn too. And one by one, the dad teaches his kids to wash the car. He is so patient with them. They are so slow. But eventually, they work at it together. Then, once all the work's done, the dad gives each kid an ice cream for helping. What? The oldest boy is furious. He's thinking, I was there for like an hour and I washed the whole left side of the car. My younger siblings were working for like 5 minutes, and half of that time they were mucking around and not doing any work. And even when they did do work, sucked. How dare my dad treat them as if I was equal to them? This is so unfair. But the oldest kid didn't do as good a job as he thinks. Like we saw, he's not good at washing a car. He's 5. He's missed a bunch of dirt on the left side of the car, and his dad had to clean it later. In the end, he was just like the others. He just thought that he was better than them. And in the end, it was actually more work for the dad to include any of his kids in the job. He could have done it way faster by himself. See, none of these kids deserved the reward that they got. The work that they did wasn't by their own skill or willingness. Their father lovingly and gently gave them work to do. It was his work, not the kid. So the reward, just like the work, doesn't belong to them. It's a gift from the Father. If you're a Christian, then God has brought you into his kingdom. The work that you do isn't from you. It's from God. It's his gift and generosity that let you do work for him. We need to get this clear. If we don't, we'll be tempted to compare the work that we do to the work that others do. We'll look down on people that we think contribute less to God than we do. We'll be like the first workers, the oldest child. We will deceive ourselves. And if we do this, we actually haven't understood how we got into the kingdom in the first place, by God's generosity. When we do feel these feelings, we have to return to God's generosity. We have to realize that our Father brought us along and did the work for us. If we don't, we're in danger of losing our salvation because we stop trusting what God gives us and start trusting ourselves instead. Now, if you're not a Christian, it's not anything that you do that gets you into God's kingdom. God, the vineyard owner, doesn't invite you in because of your skills or gifts. It's not because of the work you do in the kingdom either. Rather, it's because God is generous. All the work you will do in the kingdom will be a gift from him. Jesus is saying that you don't contribute anything to your invitation to be in God's kingdom. The work you do isn't your contribution either. It's God's work. It's all by God's generosity. God's generosity is what makes you win. But how can we believe this? How do we know that this really is how the kingdom of heaven works? Point number 3. You can only win big because God paid the price. You can only enter the kingdom, and you can only work in the kingdom because God paid the price. Let's zoom out for a second. Who is Jesus? He says that he's the Son of Man. As we've seen, Daniel 7 shows us that the Son of Man has power and glory over all the earth's kingdoms. God is going to give him all the world. As well, Jesus has walked on water, he's healed people, and he's fed thousands with almost nothing. He's been transfigured into a blazing, glorious figure, and God himself has endorsed him. Jesus is the Old Testament God, God's Son and chosen King. Jesus is at the top of all creation. Jesus is the absolute first. But where's Jesus going? Come with me to verses 17 to 19. Jesus is going to Jerusalem so that the religious leaders can kill him. They're going to sentence him to death. They're going to judge him and decide how his life will end. They're going to mock him, flog him, spit on him, and kill him. They're going to hand him over to the Gentiles. They're going to give up God's king to people outside of God's people to be killed. And this will all happen in Jerusalem, God's city made to honor Jesus. Jesus, King of Israel, the Son of God, is going from absolute thirst to absolute fast. And he's doing this to bring you to God. The twist to the story is that the landowner himself paid the price. Jesus earned the reward which Christians receive from God. This is how the landowner can be generous. Without Jesus' death, the landowner in this story can't be generous to the workers. The reward that gets paid to the workers belongs to Jesus. He earned it at the cross when he died in place of those who trust him. This is how people who don't deserve an invitation get one. This is how people who don't deserve to work for God get to. This is how some can work for 1 hour and still get paid the same as the others, because the landowner has already done the work himself. The workers only need to accept the landowner's invite and they'll be rewarded. The reason why you don't contribute anything to the kingdom of heaven is because Jesus already contributed everything. He did this because he loves you and he wants you to come to him. What does this mean for us? Firstly, we can trust the story that Jesus tells. Jesus lived out becoming last so that we could be first. Jesus won our reward for us. He guaranteed our invite to the kingdom. We can trust that he's going to reward us for trusting in him. Secondly, we can only rely on the reward Jesus has won for us. We can't trust our own works either to get into God's kingdom or to earn his reward. If we do, we're in serious danger. When we compare ourselves to others, we're going against God's plan. We're trusting in ourselves and rejecting God's invitation. We're saying to Jesus, thanks for dying for me, but actually, I don't need your death. I can get in by myself. I'm good enough. We're saying that God should invite us and reward us based on what we've done, based on who we are. But looking at ourselves, do we want to go down that path? Not pretty, is it? Jesus is the only one who deserves a reward from God, not us. And so we can only rely on Jesus' reward. We can only rely on God's generosity. It's the only way that we can come to him. Thirdly and lastly, let's rejoice in these things. We have contributed nothing to God and we have hit the jackpot. God has been so generous to us. He's brought us into his kingdom through his generosity alone, his will, his initiative, his cost, his son dying for us. We can come to God, be part of his kingdom. We can be brothers and sisters and carry out his work on earth. How good is this? We can hold out God's invitation to others so that they can enjoy his generosity too. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that you paid the ultimate price for us to come to you, your Son, Jesus. Thank you that we don't contribute anything because you are generous. Please help us to remember this as we do your work. Help us to hold out your invitation into your kingdom. And let those who haven't said yes to you say yes. In your Son's name,